This podcast is brought to you by the following
Why don't you go like
sponsors.
this and have lightning come from your hands? Yeah.
I'll just do this.
Effects.
Finishers MMA is located at 3761 Nicholas Street in Easton, PA, Lehigh Valley's home for 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. The amount of people that they have over there instructing is insane. They have J.M. Holland, John Thor Blanks opening up 10th Planet Allentown, Zach Meslaney, Grace Gundrum. It is elite teaching over there. They teach self-defense, no-gi jiu-jitsu, and kickboxing. They have a kids martial arts program that is building and growing, and Grace is teaching every single kids class. Get over there. They are the biggest killers in the game. That's 3761 Nicholas Street in Easton, PA. Do you have anything to interject?
You didn't let me talk. I don't know.
No, I would like trying to get quicker on that. But they have multiple schools, and it's www.finishersmma.com. That has their schedule on there, and it has when they rotate everything. And they have evening classes because if you work and you can't get there, they even have, I think, an 8 o'clock class on Wednesday.
The thing I like the best is that they treat people with respect. It's not like one of those weird places you go and they talk down to you and, you know, like I'm a big bad sensei kind of crap.
No, not at all.
They're super cool guys. Everybody that goes there is nice. Everybody's friendly. It's just a wonderful place to go and learn jiu-jitsu. Wonderful place to go learn choke people.
Yeah.
Just go choke some people.
Every time I've been over there, and I get a little intimidated sometimes going into classes like that, even like going to the gym or like the Y, I get a little uncomfortable, and they make you feel at home there. Super professional. The guys have been doing it for a while. Zach, JM, and Thor all have their black belts. So
and they have crazy top-notch equipment. Everything is awesome. It's not some...
Yep. Every now and then they do
awesome. It's an awesome place.
Seminars and stuff there too. So check it out. It's finishersmma.com, and they are located at 3761 Nicholas Street in Easton, PA. Their social media is everywhere, so you can go find them. And thank you guys for being a sponsor. Taylor Edge Wood Company. Drew Hoagland. They make handmade and local crafting and bringing you gorgeous custom wood design. If you're looking for a custom table, nightstand, countertop, and more, they can help you. Drew made this table and that desk. A lot of people always have asked us who did this, and it was Taylor Edge Wood Company. Their social media you can find is Taylor Edge Wood Co. on Facebook and Instagram. Instagram has a lot of the pictures and stuff. That's the best place to follow them. They just got the website up. It should be running by the time this airs, but that's tayloredgewoodco.com, and he's going to have cutting boards on there. Their T-shirts are really cool. I know they're doing fall shirts for that, and he's just a stand-up guy. He's done nothing but help the show since day one and has really ultimate crafting.
Yeah, if you're looking to get something different for your home and you don't want to have the same boring home with the same boring box store, stupid tables that are particle board that are wrapped in crappy vinyl stuff, check him out. He'll come and give you an estimate, let you pick out whatever you want. He's a crazy nut for black walnut, and he loves the stuff, the smell
He's
of it.
Obsessed with
crazy.
it.
It's a little awkward, but he's very very talented. And like I said, if you want something custom and nothing says that you're cool, then I have a damn custom table and you don't.
Yeah, and you get professional quotes, and he's also got that he's going to be having that on the website where you'll be able to get quotes off of there. So if you're looking for top-notch,
locally sourced,
everything's out of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, support local people.
Yeah, so hit them up. You can hit up tayloredgewoodco@gmail.com for any inquiries on what you need. Instagram's a good way to get a hold of him, and he runs it with his wife, so they're super local to us, and they helped us out since the beginning. So please go check them out, and thank you for being a sponsor.
All right, our next sponsor is All Valley Rooter and Plumbing.
Jared LaBarba. I've been friends with Jared for almost my entire life, and he came down to the studio looking to sponsor, and we had a long conversation, and he wanted help building in the Nazareth area. He has a lot of work in the Lehigh Valley, but he specifically wanted to get into Nazareth, and we have a really big reach in Nazareth. It's not a big place, but we do have bigger reach than anyone else here.
We control the whole
We
town.
own Nazareth. But Jared went through his whole story and told me everything he's doing, and his plumbing is top notch. Yes. They do faucet repair, sub pump replacement, sink installation, pipe installation, leaks, toilet repair, and more. They have 24-hour service, 365 days a year. They charge by the job, not the hour. All services come with a 1-year warranty and guarantee. He's going to be our plumber from now on if we have any problems with the sink and whatnot. Yeah. Having plumbing issues is probably one of the biggest headaches ever.
It's one of those things that if something goes bad with your plumbing, it's really bad. There is no minor plumbing issue. And it's good to have someone that's local that you can call, that you know, and say, hey, I really need your help, as opposed to some guy that he's going to spend, he's going to take 3 hours to get there and he's going to show up. He's going to overcharge you. It's just not worth it. Go with a local guy, super professional. He can do everything you really want. He lists a bunch of stuff there, but I'm pretty sure he can do pretty much everything involving plumbing. So I'm just going to call him for everything. So. Whatever.
Yeah, and you have 2 properties that you can use them for now, too, because you didn't have a good experience.
No, they were horrible.
I wish you would say who it was.
I really hate that.
His website is allvalleyrouter.net, and that is the place where you're going to find all of the information you need to get a hold of Jared if you have any plumbing issues, or if you're just trying to get quotes for stuff. But they are 365 days a year. They are open 24 hours, and we want to thank him for being one of our first sponsors on the show. It means a lot, and all you Nazareth peeps or anybody in the Lehigh Valley who wants a trusted, reliable, professional plumber, please contact Jared.
And our next sponsor is Rips Auto Detail. I love this guy. Go ahead.
One of my favorite guests on the show.
Cool. He's a really nice guy. He's a very good DJ also, by the way.
Yes, and he's super professional at his job. He's got over 15 years of experience. He is located at 630 North Nelson Street in Allentown, PA. He does paint correction, ceramic coating, interior, and pro auto detail. If you follow him on Rips Auto Detail on Instagram, it's insane what this guy actually does with a car.
I am recommending that you go to Popeyes, which is right up the street, and you put fingerprints all over your vehicle, and then you go there, and he will make it perfect again.
Yeah, he's got 15 years of experience. He's got a package for everyone. What he stressed on the show is that he doesn't just do super high-end vehicles. Yep. He can do anything from, if you just have a daily driver and you just like having a clean car, you can get that done, all the way up to getting a boat done.
Yeah, well, it's worth it because I had my SUV detailed last year, actually, just because, especially when you live around here with the salt and everything else, if you get a really good detail on it, it actually will keep your car looking better than dealing with all the salt, because you keep going for car washes and stuff. That's not good. So if you get a really good detail on it, it actually will help all that stuff. So it basically winterizes your thing. And plus, when it gets nice out, you just go there and get it, just touched up a little bit, get it, refreshed, and you have a car that doesn't look like you're a slob.
You can contact him directly on Instagram, and that's at Rips Auto Detail, or you can call him at 484-553-1366. If you really want to know what this guy does, check out our past podcast with him. It's got a boatload of information. I didn't know, I knew he was good at what he was doing, and he opened his own business and all that, but to hear the story of how he got to where he's at and the 15 years experience, he's a super pro. He's a really great guy. Just go check out his stuff at Rips Auto Detail on Instagram, Facebook, and his website is coming soon. So go check him out, and he's one of our first sponsors as well. And we couldn't do the show without all these people, so I want to thank everyone. And shout out to Rips Auto Detail, and give him a follow.
And he gives you a free bucket of chicken.
No, he does not.
He's from Popeyes, says he does. Put that in there.
He didn't even like Popeyes.
Rips, you need to give out free chicken. Thank you.
Check out what he's doing on social media, and we won't use that part. And then we'll end it with, this is a professional Class A operation. Check out the podcast we did with him.
Our next sponsor is Luke Delmeyer Custom Knives. If you've ever wanted a custom knife, say a chef knife, say a camp knife, say any kind of cool custom knives, I'm sure any of you guys have watched Forge and Fire or whatever, this guy actually does that. He makes wonderful, crazy knives. He's leaps and bounds above anybody you're going to have around here. He's a good dude. You can contact him and give him basic parameters of what you want to make for our custom knives. He does sell his own knives on his website.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different knives on the website and his Instagram as well.
Instagram, he puts it up a little bit, and he'll say, hey, man, I'm selling this. His website's lukedelmeyer.com. Yeah, I mean, he lists a bunch of stuff. Like I said, you can ask for the custom stuff. He's starting a new line, which you can talk about, of the chef knives.
Yeah, the chef knife that he brought over to the studio was incredible because he showed me the demo one that they started with that he made out of a leaf spring, which is insane. But then what he handed off to me, I immediately just wanted to start prepping and cutting onions.
You were trying to.
I was excited to cook, and that's what a chef knife should do. And if
you
you're
just kept telling him you wanted to use it to cut something.
I did. And if you're looking for a chef knife or any sort of custom knives that you would like in your life for whatever reason, this guy, the amount of work that he's putting behind it, the craftsmanship that's behind his actual craft with blacksmithing, the dude's extremely talented, extremely humble, and please go check out his social media, and it's Luke Delmeyer at Instagram. That's where you're going to get a lot of his knives. He's testing the knives.
But you forgot the coolest part.
What's that?
You want to make your own knife?
Yeah.
He's got classes.
Yeah. That's right.
He has his own classes. You can go there, look like an idiot, because that's what I'll probably look like when I do mine. But you can go there, and he offers classes and teaches you how to make a knife. And I think that's awesome because there is no one and nowhere in this area that does that.
No. And if you're looking for a custom knife of any range, whether it's something that you're just looking for hiking, or if you're looking for a chef knife, or you're just looking to collect something as a hobby, go check out his social media, check out his webpage, get in touch with him, and see which knife is right for you. And that's lukedelmeyer.com. And thank you for being a sponsor. Episode 39, Never Again Radio. Welcome to Never Again Radio. Thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it. I've been following you for quite a bit. I'm really big into MMA, and then I started slowly seeing you start popping up on just bigger interviews and stuff like that, and then it was just fun to start following you. And then I was like, I want to reach out because I'm like super interested in how you even got into journalism, or how you guys got into the UFC that much.
Oh man, I mean, I was just in university at University of Victoria in British Columbia, obviously being Canadian up here. And I didn't really know what I wanted to take, honestly. I went there just because I felt like I was obligated to go, to post-secondary after finishing high school. And first year I took some communications courses, and then second year was kind of just doing a bunch of random stuff. And then in between that second and third year, had been really good friends with a bunch of other UFC fans, and one night we were all just like hanging out, and we decided it would be a fun idea to make like a little blog of our own. So I think we did like a blog spot, I think it was called, back in the day.
Yeah.
And we write up some of those things, and basically I was the one who cared more about it than anyone. Like I would be hassling everyone to get all their predictions and any little things that we would do together for stories on there. And I just really fell in love with the idea of running a site and just keeping up with news and all that kind of stuff. So as I was figuring out between my second and third year what I wanted to be taking, I noticed that there was some journalism courses available, but they were pretty much only for the minor. And for my major, I'd have to do something more along the lines of creative writing, which I didn't like nearly as much. They were making you do poetry and fiction and all these things that aren't necessarily what my interests were. But in some of the other courses, you were able to do like news stuff and online stuff. And I really excelled in those courses. So tried to figure out how I could really take it to the next level after that. Like I said, the school didn't offer a major in journalism, so I kind of had to look around a little bit to see what other places had opportunities like that. And pretty much the two major options in Canada were TRU, which is in Kelowna, British Columbia, where it is very cold for a lot of days of the year, or Toronto, which is still cold some of the year, but very much less so than being like way northern BC. So ended up applying to that school and, moved all the way from the West Coast to the East Coast. And, that's considered pretty much the best journalism school in all of Canada. So I moved out here for that, and then really started, working this little blog that we had on the side too. I was putting more time, more investment into that, and I actually had a friend of mine create like a more real website that wasn't just like a blog spot, and was putting a lot of focus on that, and the two just really went hand in hand. And that's really where I was able to jump off at. I was doing that stuff on the side, the website. I even was able to use the website for some of my school projects and stuff, and it just really worked out, perfect synergy, and took off from that point.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because like halfway through that, listening to it, there's a lot of people that go to school and have no clue what they want to do, and they don't ever figure it out. Like, how did that feel, like halfway through, being like, oh shit, this is what I want to do, and then having a direct path and being able to dump it all in, and then when you're outside of school, you're also like building up this thing on the side that's like your passion project, but it's becoming real because now you can actually go to school to do it professionally. That must have felt crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of knew in the back of my head, though, that whole time, like, there's so limited jobs in MMA and stuff. Like, am I going to school to do something that, there may not even be a job opening for it? Because I just know, like, especially the people who make a full-time living in this, they're few and far between. And, it's a very lucky opportunity to be able to get there. But it just really worked out. Like, I went to summer to do a summer internship in New York. Between, I think it was after my third, fourth year, because I obviously, transferring credits and stuff, I had to, go back a little bit once I switched schools. I wasn't able to finish the whole thing up in 4 years. And I went and did an internship in New York. And during that summer, I went to a Beat the Streets wrestling event, which they had in Times Square. And I met Luke Thomas there, who I'm sure you guys are familiar with that name if you, follow MMA media at all. He works for SiriusXM and everything now, Showtime. And I met him at this event, and I just kind of told him that I was an aspiring journalist, and, asking him for some advice and everything, was sitting next to him. And he ended up connecting me with someone at MMA Mania, which is also owns the same website as Bloody Elbow and MMA Fighting, which is Vox Media. So he was in that loop still before he had moved on, and he was able to really connect me with someone at MMA Mania. And I started working there for a little bit, again, while doing the school stuff on the side. And the paychecks were slightly better than like the Google ads money that I was getting on my own website, but not by a whole much more. So, but it was like actually a, legitimate established MMA website, a little more so than just my little blog. So that was definitely a promising step in that point. And then, you start getting a little more confident. You're hearing good feedback from people in the industry, and people are starting to pick up your calls and stuff. So it started feeling a little more real at that point. But, to answer your question, I guess more so, it was a good feeling, really more than anything, to just, after looking a few years in school, to find something that I was really passionate about and be like, okay, I'm not really just going aimlessly through school here. I'm starting to work on something I really like.
Yeah, I always push people to kind of chase after stuff like that. And once you're on that path, like, it just seems like things start lining up. Like how you were doing the blog, but then you switched to journalism, but then you met this guy. And it's like, it seems like when you finally find that like passion that you want to start pursuing, that it just kind of seems like the doors, it's not like they're open all the time, but it seems like when you're on the right path, it's just kind of a feeling. Like, the meeting up with that guy was because, you care about what you're doing and went there and met him, and it's like, it seems like doors open if you actually pursue what you want to do.
Yeah, and people say it all the time, and I went to school in New York for a while too, and it's always, if you know what you want to do, and the people say like, oh, okay, I want to do this, I want to be in journalism, I want to follow MMA, I want to do all that stuff. Great. You need to go to the events and talk to every single person you possibly can, because you never know who you're going to bump into. You never know who you're going to talk to, or who, and that's how a lot of things get started. How many stories you hear of, hey, I was standing at an event and I met this guy. And then this guy said, hey, I kept in contact with him. I emailed him here and there. And all of a sudden he's like, hey, I'm going to be in town. Do you want to meet? That's how everything starts. That's how, it's the way that business is most of the time. It's all of who you know and who you met when you got into it. Because you can go to school all you want and have every degree, but if you don't know anybody, you're just a name on a paper. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially when you're talking about a media industry and
Yes.
journalism and stuff, it's so heavily reliant on contacts and source, resourcing
Yep.
and all that kind of stuff. I know a lot of people who do this job who I'm sure, it gets the wrath in the vein of some people, but don't have journalism degrees. Like
Yeah.
one of the very best, most long established reporters, and I won't out him by name because I don't want to, give that away in case he doesn't feel comfortable, but I know he has a degree in drama.
Yeah.
He's like never really took any journalism courses in school, but he's still one of the absolute best in our entire industry. So,
Well, it's I mean, that happened to me too. That guy, Jurisitz, he went to community college for radio broadcasting. I went for recording music, got a degree. He ran a studio. Never did any kind of classes that I took, and he just took it over. And it was just because he met a guy who owned a studio and said, "Why don't you come to my studio?" And I was like, "Damn it!" Like that, son of a bitch. Like I spent a lot of time doing this, but it didn't matter. It's who you link up with. I mean, that has a lot more to say. Yeah.
What was the name of the your original blog that you were doing?
It was fightcove.com.
Yeah.
I grew up in a little city in North Vancouver, British Columbia called Deep Cove.
Yeah.
So we just kind of did like a little play on words there. So that's what it ended up being. We workshop a lot of them. I can't remember many of the bad ones off the top of my head. I do know I still have a notebook sitting at home at my mom's house in Vancouver with like all of the workshop ideas that we did. And I went back and read through it with one of my friends a few years ago, and it was just like embarrassing some of the names that were on there. It's pretty funny. So have you just been doing journalism for MMA and solely, or have you branched out and have done other pieces, or like what were you doing besides the MMA? Were you just kind of just doing your blog and the MMA and not really doing that much else? Yeah, I mean, it was basically just all that to start with. But once I was living in Toronto and ultimately got the job with MMA Junkie and USA Today, which came about a year after that MMA Mania job I was referencing earlier. I was able to open up a little more doors to other sports. Being here in Toronto, that's actually right around the year when the Raptors started getting increasingly better, around like 2013, 2014-ish. And obviously, they had that climb year after year after year, and then ultimately won the championship last year. So, yeah, I've covered the past 6 seasons of Raptors, so I've got to see like that side of the industry as well, covering another sport. And then sometimes when there's things here, just I'll go cover it. Really depends on what it is. Like I've been to baseball, MLS, hockey, like all different various things. But the bread and butter definitely comes off MMA, and then side gig NBA being the most.
How much do you like to travel? Like when I first started following you, I was so jealous. Like, cause I'm like, we're the guys that come down to the studio. Like half the other side you can't see is like the whole area is just built for watching MMA. And then like a bunch of us get together and we'll pick like somebody in the main event and then do like food based around them. So like if it's somebody from Cuba, we're making like Cubanos and stuff like that. So like fighting is there's like a core group of us down here, and we love watching it. And when I started like my interest in interviewing, I was like, man, like that's got to be so surreal to be into MMA that much. And then I watched your progression grow as to where you started doing like the bigger interviews, and then like it was just like now it's like you're kind of just you talk to everybody that's coming in and out of it and going to almost every event, aren't you?
A lot of them, yeah. I mean, and we have obviously a really great team at MMA Junkie. We're kind of spread out throughout the world at this point. I mean, we have people Eastern United States, Western United States, in the middle ground. We have people in Europe. We have someone in Egypt. We pretty much almost have a global 24-hour presence in terms of like having someone on the website being able to cover news at that whole point. So I pretty much do a large majority of the East Coast shows.
Yeah.
Which can be hit and miss just because it's so much easier to travel. And then obviously if there's a big fight in Vegas or somewhere else and they feel the need to bring another person in, I'll usually get that opportunity. But a lot of it really does depend on geography, just what's obviously the cheapest to getting someone there, because we have travel budgets, all those various things. But yeah, as much as they can get me out, I'm always willing to go. And the East Coast, the UFC definitely gives its fair share of events to the East Coast. So I'm able to go to something. It almost feels like every month or so.
Yeah, it's crazy how much the fights ramped up. I mean, it's just nonstop fights at this point.
Oh man, and yeah, who knows? I'm sure we'll get into it a little later. What's going to happen on the back end of this coronavirus stuff? But
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
the UFC schedule is going to be even busier closing at the end of the year if we're able to actually get back to events.
Now, how is that going to be? Well, I don't want to get into that yet because that's kind of like just such a weird taboo area, and like I don't even want to think about the May 9th thing being canceled. Like I don't even get excited at this point. But how is that like from the journalist side? Like, are you like? Do you guys have a meeting and you're like, hey, like the event's coming up and we're going to need you to interview Khabib, or we're going to need you to interview Tony Ferguson? Like, how is it set up for you guys to get those interviews, or are you sent there and then you have to decide what you think is going to be the best interview? You have your questions ready and you just kind of grab who you can. Like, how does the media work behind the scenes as far as you guys having access?
It's usually a little bit of both what you said there. Typically, when you go to a fight week and you're credentialed as media, they send you out a fight week schedule, which comes out like the week before, the Friday, Thursday before, and that basically just has the details. And I guess a pretty standard fight week would be like, say, an open workouts on Wednesday, the media day Thursday, then weigh-ins Friday, fight obviously Saturday night. So on the Wednesday and Thursday, they usually make, I guess we'll start Wednesday. They usually make, if it's a pay-per-view card, the top maybe 2-3 fights, depending on what the order is available at that. They'll have them do a scrum, and then they'll bring them, they'll work out first, then do a scrum for maybe 5-10 minutes or something. And that's usually when everyone has their first chance to talk to them that week, and you just throw some questions here and there and everything. But you almost know that everyone's kind of holding their best stuff back for Thursday when they can get their one-on-ones and all that kind of stuff at media day. And the media days are just really up in the air. You usually get about an hour to talk to, sometimes they bring in the entire card. There's like 26 people there. So you literally couldn't talk to everyone. You have to make choices at that point. And, do you want to spend 20 minutes waiting for Tony Ferguson when maybe at the end of those 20 minutes, they're like, hey, you're not even going to get a one-on-one. You guys just scrum with everyone. And you're like, hey, I could have just interviewed 5 people while I waited in line for this. So it definitely is like a picking and choosing type of thing when you go into these. Sometimes, like if you want to, or if you're able to, if you have a good relationship with a manager or a coach or the fighter themselves, you can set something up on your own outside of the media schedule. And that's usually when you'll see like a reporter interviewing someone maybe in their hotel room or doing something a little different. That's usually set up independent. But the UFC definitely does do a good job at those open workouts, the media days, at least giving you some opportunity to be around, whether it's the biggest names or some of the people lower on the card. It really does change week to week, and it depends what amount of media is there, what, all those different kind of things, the locations, all those kind of things. Like you're not going to get anywhere near Khabib on the Conor McGregor fight week.
Yeah.
But in the Dustin Poirier fight week in Abu Dhabi, much less media, and you're able to get a little more time with him. So there's so many different circumstances that factor into how you're able to really operate and what type of act you're able to get on a given fight week.
Well, it's in their best interest too to let you guys have kind of free reign, because it's ultimately pushing the fight. You know what I mean? They're going to make more money in the end if you can interview people, get your stories out, get people interested and get people more excited to see the fight. I mean, it's in their best interest to open everything up. So they've figured it out over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a tough gig. Some of these fighters, you do feel bad for them too. Like you want to get your own story, you want to get your interview, but some of these headliners, especially the champions, they put them through the absolute ringer when it comes to media. Like they make them do so much stuff that even if you have a good relationship, you like look at some of these people sometimes and you're like, man, I feel bad. Like I don't even want to ask for anything extra at this point, even though you'd probably give it to me. But like you got to fight in 2 days. You have X amount of weight to cut by tomorrow morning. Like there's a lot of different things that go into this. And really, as much as you're trying to be selfish and get your own content, you're obviously dealing with a human being that's X amount of hours away from getting a cage fight. So you need to tread lightly sometimes.
Now, how stressful is that trying to come up with questions? Like trying to get, you know what I mean? Like you don't want to do like an aha moment, but you want to get something that's, that when it gets out, it's going to be like, oh, that was a really good question. That's what I really wanted to know. How nerve-wracking is that? I think I'd have one. That would be it, and that'd be done for the next couple months.
They're like, "Do you like fighting?" I gotta go.
So, what do you like getting punched in the face? Nope. Okay, I'm done. We're good.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a challenging aspect, especially some of these fighters, like we were just talking about. They get put through hours and hours of media, and they get asked the same question tens and tens of times, and they have to give the same answer. And it's like, that's, I'm sure, also part of what just makes it such an exhausting process. So, of course, you want to be the person there that throws them the curveball and asks them something that maybe they haven't been asked 20 times already that day, or something that maybe makes them think a little differently. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder. It really just depends on the person, the circumstance. Like, really, there is situations where, as creative of a mind as you may have for asking questions, like sometimes you need these quotes because you kind of know what's going to be said. So you ask them the same thing again, and sometimes they give you good answers. Sometimes it's like trying to pull blood from a stone. It just really depends on the different personalities and all that stuff. Like, there's some guys you could go up to a Diego Sanchez or something and be like,
they're the best.
You'd be like, hey, don't even need to ask a question. He'll go off for 20 minutes without like taking a break. So it really just depends. And then you'll have another fighter that'll give you 3-word answers every single time. And you're like, bro.
Well, that's how Chael used to be. You ask him questions, you would just tell how good he was. That's all he would do all the time. That was his gimmick. Hey, it pushes shit out of fights.
Yeah.
So,
Do you have do you write the stuff down, or do you kind of like know what you're going to do before you get in there and then just kind of like off the cuff it?
I largely off the cuff it. Sometimes, like, the night before, I'll maybe write down a few notes as I'm doing research and stuff like that. But I definitely try to avoid as much as possible bringing like a pen and paper or reading off my phone or anything, especially when it's like a one-on-one. Like, if you're in a big scrum and there's 20 reporters and you need to remember your question, there's no camera on you. It doesn't really make a huge difference. It's not like you're just doing a conversation like here, where if there's a big break, will you look down and read something, it comes across as really awkward. That's a little more freedom. But yeah, when it's like a one-on-one interview or on-camera interview, something like that, pretty much just go off the cuff. Sometimes that's unfortunate because you forget something really important that you want to ask, but I think that ultimately makes the biggest benefit in like a free-flowing conversation. Because if you're just sitting there, you read your next question and you're thinking about what you're going to say next, you're maybe not listening to what the person is saying to you right there. Maybe they say something that leads into a way better question than you were going to ask, and you miss it because you were thinking about the next thing.
Yeah, and I think if you had them written down, it would feel like a test.
Yeah. A little bit, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Plus, like what he was saying, it's just easier to.
But once again, if I wouldn't write them down, all those little questions would fly out of my head.
What was it like when you first started developing relationships with the fighters, where you've seen them a couple times, and it's like, because I've seen just fighters and reporters or journalists, like you kind of tell like, and they're like get excited to see you because you almost develop this relationship because you see them at almost every event.
Yeah. Of course, you try to keep unbiased and all those different things, but it's human nature. You're around people more so than often. You develop relationships, all those kind of things. Of course, you try to keep everything as professional as possible. But yeah, I can tell you guys a story, I guess, that probably sums this up perfectly. I was at UFC 241, which was last August in Anaheim. That was when Nate Diaz fought Anthony Pettis, and Stipe Miocic and Daniel Cormier had their rematch. And we were at and I've met Daniel Cormier, a handful of times and everything. I in my mind, didn't really think we had any sort of unique relationship or anything. I just thought we had done a few interviews, nothing out of the ordinary with some other fighters I've encountered. But at the very end of the media day, it was one of those things I was kind of explaining earlier. Everyone's waiting in line for their one-on-ones and everything. And there's maybe 5-6 people left, and it's at the very end, and the UFC PR comes over and says, hey, we don't have enough time for any more one-on-ones. Can all you guys just get together and wrap this up with a quick scrum or whatever? So the reporters start moving in, and Daniel Cormier looks up and he sees me and my cameraman, who he also had a pre-existing relationship with, and looks over to the UFC PR people and says, nope, I'm doing them right after. Like, we're doing one more interview with them, and he had to go do, I guess, live TV hits and everything. Yeah. I really was taken aback by that moment. He did his little scrum with the other reporters, then came to the side and gave me a one-on-one, and honestly, that meant the world to me, and something that really did take me off guard. Him just being like, hey, no, those are my guys. We're going to do one more with them. And I really, really appreciate that from DC.
I mean, I want to hate him. I just do. I want to. But I've heard so many interviews. He's been on so many different shows. He's just a nice guy. But when and I know you're fighting and stuff, but he just comes across like a dick. But he's not. He's like a really nice guy. I really want to hate him. It really hurts me that I have to say he's a nice guy. But he really is.
Daniel Cormier is genuinely one of the best people in this game.
Yes, I know. And that makes me angry because every other interview when he's not around, like he's around his kids and stuff, like he's the sweetest guy. Like he's a nice guy. But I don't know. He just comes off like I said earlier, like Chael. Chael was always a dick. But that's his persona. He wanted to be the bad guy. But in real life, if you meet him, he all his regular interview, he's just a nice guy. That's how a lot of these guys are. But yeah, Cormier, damn it. I want to hate him.
You're a wrestler too. I mean,
know.
The wrestling community adores him. I don't know how you don't.
I don't know. But anyway, I honestly heard he's a really nice guy, so I guess it'll be okay. Damn it.
Were you caught up in any of like over the last couple of years and all the media drama with like the McGregor fight or like the thing happening afterwards with like the mini riot or like when Diaz was throwing the water bottles and the monster cans and all that? Were you a part of any of that stuff? Like caught up in it, like being like, this is crazy?
I mean, I think I was at all those events you just referenced.
Yeah.
I was at the McGregor bus dolly incident too. I remember him running past us and ultimately getting in that elevator that sent him downstairs and led to that crazy bus attack incident with Habib. I've been to most of them, but I haven't really been like in the middle of the fray.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't sitting cage side for the Conor Habib fight, where of course a lot of that stuff unfolded near press row and everything. But you're there, and you definitely get caught up in the adrenaline and just
it's got to be crazy
and everything. And
well, yeah, how close are you guys? Where is press row? Like
it's literally right outside the octagon.
Really?
You'll see, like, if you ever, next time you watch a UFC fight, just try to kind of take a peek outside the cage as they're moving around, and you'll see, like, the people in the background all on their computers and stuff. And that's the side of the octagon where there is press row. And then it completely depends. Again, they usually hand those out to like the press row seats to the senior reporters, or if there's like one representative there from like a really major news outlet, they kind of try to do that stuff. But and depending on the venue too, sometimes they have like a media balcony which hangs right above the octagon, and then of course like the backstage where you're doing the post fight interviews and all that kind of stuff. So really depends on, I guess, your duty and your job on where you get seating. But yeah, the press row seats are definitely fortunate to have, and they're really close to the action. And sometimes it can be a little crazy when you're that close.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What's it like being that big of an MMA fan and then now coming this far to the point where you're at these events, you're interviewing these fighters, you have a camera crew with you? Like, it's got to be surreal at some point.
Definitely, it is. And I think maybe at points probably don't appreciate it enough, but you're there working, and it gets kind of crazy. But at times too, man, like you cover these events and stuff, and I think this is something people probably don't understand enough. Like as an MMA reporter, whether you're at home or at the fight covering it, you don't get nearly enough time as you would imagine to watch the actual fights that are happening. Yeah. Like maybe if you're doing play-by-play or the recaps and you're doing that kind of stuff, but if you're editing the videos or writing up a lot of different stuff, you're probably half watching a lot of the time, and maybe you're in the backstage doing an interview with this has happened many a times. You're doing a scrum with X fighter, and then the next fight comes out and they get a huge knockout, and then that person has to come back after, and you're like, well, great win, but no one saw a second of it because we were doing an interview during the entire fight. So like, can you walk us through what just happened?
I heard you did really well by the crowd, but we have no idea what happened.
You won. That's all we need to know.
You brought up an interesting point when you were saying you're editing the videos, and I didn't even think of that, is when you guys are doing this stuff, you're cutting and editing it so it's live as this stuff's going on because you want the people to be paying attention to your feed while the fights are going on?
For sure, and the same thing with photos and trying to make photo galleries and handling social media and just all these different factors that really go into, I guess, making a media site run smoothly and trying to maximize all the resources and the stuff that we have on site for an event.
That's crazy. I didn't even you don't think of it because you're just seeing instant updates of like somebody getting knocked out, or here's the footage of this, or here's this interview that this person did, but you don't realize that, like, because like I know the work that goes behind this, and then so now realizing that you guys are editing and adding things and layering things, and you have your intro and your outro and you're adjusting audio. That's got to be so crazy to get all that work done and up while you're still doing it, and you have to still keep going until the event's over. That's a shitload of work.
Yeah, and then even after the event too. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen some of these press conferences go until 3 a.m, and you know, each person is talking for 35 minutes, and it gets a little crazy. Those fight nights are long at times, and I'm probably ultimately going to take a few years off my life. But hey,
yeah, because they, I try and stay up and watch them as it goes on, and those. Like, they changed it up before. They used to have all the fighters all at once, and then now they do them individually. But they don't start that until like almost 2:30, and then it's like 15 to 20 minutes with each person, and then it's like, I think I stayed up once since they started doing it that late, and it's like almost 4 or 5 in the morning.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then you start writing the stories after, and then have to start, you know, picking the videos apart and doing all these different things. So yeah, fight nights definitely get late and long, but hey. That's what we got to do to bring the people the coverage, right?
When do you ever have off?
Not very much now.
Yeah, that's the tough part of this industry, right? It's 24/7, 365, especially the UFC. I mean, I know other sports technically have off seasons. I know people who, like other NBA reporters and stuff, be like, oh, at least you get an off season. And they're like, not really, because we go straight into the draft, and then you know, some years there's the Olympics or international qualifying, and then we go into this like training camp and all these different things. It's like, it is almost like 12 months a year for those other sports too, but this was the one sport where there's literally live events and nothing changing 12 months of the year. It's
an insane grind. I mean, I remember being into the UFC, and it wasn't popular, and they would run the pay-per-views at bars. And I remember just going to the bar by myself, because it wasn't like how it is now, where like a bunch of people are into it and watching it, like, and it was just like a pay-per-view every couple months, or like once a month it turned into. Then when they got involved with Fox, and then now ESPN, it's insane what they're doing. It's just, I mean, I love it. It's constant. It's nonstop. It's few and far between that there is a fight not going on.
Yeah, I think April is going to be the first full calendar month since, I believe, 2005 that the UFC has not had a fight card, which is kind of surreal to think about. But obviously, circumstances being different, they're supposed to have 4 shows this month.
Yeah,
so
and they were big shows too.
That wasn't by choice for them by any means, but yeah, it's definitely interesting to think about, and it's been crazy that we haven't seen a live UFC fight in over a month now at this point. Did you think that they were going to pull that off? I was flip-flopping a lot, honestly. Like, the one week I felt pretty down about it. The next week I was feeling a little more optimistic, and then I was like, there's no way, and then they ultimately pulled the plug. So yeah, I was definitely flip-flopping, but I was never super confident. Like, the highest I ever got was like, okay, 50-50 chance this happens. It just seems there's too many things stacked against them. I did not see the plug being pulled by Disney and ESPN executives. I didn't think that would ultimately be what brought an end to them wanting to do that show, but I think it was ultimately the right call to do it. I think they're just rolling the dice way too much, because what are you going to do if even you put on that event, you take all the necessary precautions, but if even one person, whether it's a fighter themselves or anyone linked to that event in any way, leaves there and, you know, has a positive test for COVID-19 and God forbid infects anyone else, that's just a PR disaster. Nightmare. That would take a very, very long time for the UFC to figure out, I think. And the other part too, on the fans end, it was like, you know, Dana White always pushes for everybody to get together because the pay-per-views are so expensive. So it's like, you would have been not promoting, but there was talks where my buddies were like, what are we going to do? And it's like, some of them didn't care. And it's like, well, maybe we'll watch the fight together. And then there was this like weird thing like, well, are we going to sacrifice social distancing to watch this? Like, it was very odd. And I mean, it's still going to be odd going into May. Now, what do you think? Well, my first question is like, do you think that the Fight Island thing, do you think that they're still going to pursue that and that's still a real thing? Because I mean, that was the first thing out of Dana's mouth when he came on the IG story, was he was just like, hey, Fight Island's real. So does that mean that they're going to still be doing these fights, whether or not everyone's telling them not to, but they're just going to do it
in uncharted waters, or like, do you think things are going to calm down and it's going to kind of be allowed? I mean, they're doing WWE.
Yeah, I think it sounds like they really want to do this. From all appearances, like it's something that is in the works. I still have no idea where on Earth this island would be.
I was going to ask you if you knew, because he's never mentioned it yet.
I don't think he's telling anyone.
But there was somebody online that was actually trying to track it, like trying to see like where he was last seen and where he's been flying. Like there's people trying to figure it out. But I'd be curious to find out. It's got to be one of those Caribbean islands that are already inhabited by a bunch of people, and it's just kind of like just people living there. That way there's already power there. You know what I mean? There's already food, water, all that stuff. It's not going to be just, like Gilligan's Island.
Like Fire Festival?
Or Fire Festival. Well, Fire Festival, that island's good. They kept telling them that they couldn't provide everything you wanted in that short amount of time.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's not going to be like Gilligan's Island. It's just like an oasis, and they just kind of build a thing.
I don't think it's going to go to that extreme. I'm sure there'll be some level of infrastructure. But, yeah, I don't know where it's going to be. I imagine, though, like, in the big picture, it does make sense in some ways to try to do this for your international fighters, because that's a big problem that the UFC is going to start running into here. Like they owe fighters fights on their contracts, and they need to find a way to be able to execute those. And there's a very good chance for still the foreseeable future, the travel restrictions aren't going to loosen up. You're not going to be able to bring in these fighters from Brazil, Russia, Europe, all these different points of the globe. So if you can find an international destination that makes it more easily accessible, say like even if you're able to fly the fighters into one big hub and then you fly them to this island on private or however you want to do it to make it work, they are going to have to find some sort of solution to give these fighters the fights that they owe them, or they're going to be in breach of contract and all these other different ramifications that could have of it. So I do think Fight Island, what's it going to look like? Is it all we're imagining in our head is some like Mortal Kombat-esque old Bruce Lee type of situation?
Honestly,
they should do it that
honestly,
way.
That would be cool. But no, I'm really envisioning it just being, because I kind of went to one. When I was younger, I used to wrestle a lot. So I went to an outside wrestling tournament, and literally they took like a massive circus tent, popped this thing up. You can fit thousands of people in it. Just like think about circus tents. They went town to town, put a huge tent up, put a ring in it. There's going to be no people watching it. It's just going to be video and audio,
I
right?
think they're just
reporters.
I think they're going to build. I think they're going to build a performance center. That would be the thing to do. Then
it's not going to take too long. It's going to take way too long to build something like that.
I don't know.
Like a year, at least.
I don't. But they're trying to. That fight in May is supposed to be
that's already built though.
Yeah, but I'm saying is like the fight in May is at an actual location, so they have time to build this. I mean, I don't know how long it would take.
That's a lot. I mean,
so I don't know.
Well,
what do you think they're going to do?
Saying they want to do island fights by mid-May.
Yeah.
It sounds like the May 9th show would be domestic. It'd be in the United States from all indications. I don't know exactly where. I know Dana said something about all future events. They're aiming for the Apex in Las Vegas. We haven't heard anything from the Las Vegas Athletic Commission or the Nevada Athletic Commission or the city of Las Vegas or anything like that on whether they'd be able to pull something like that off. But I think after that, maybe like May 16th or whatever show they're going to do after that, I think is probably going to be when they're starting to look at the island. But it's just a crazy thing to think about.
I'm telling you, write it down. Circus tents. Circus motherfucking tents.
Where
write it down.
They come through the entrance.
Listen, when I'm right, and they're going to come out in elephants and shit.
Oh my God.
You watch circus tents. Mark it down. I want credit if it happens.
I don't think they're going to come out in elephants.
God damn.
The other thing as well is, like, even take all this aside, there is fighters that have trouble getting in for visa issues as well. So, I mean, that could clear up a lot of the problems with them flying into the United States if they're technically not, you know what I mean? Like, is that going to open up for it's easier for them to travel?
I guess it just really depends on where it is. I'm really not sure. Is it going to be somewhere in North America? Is it going to be in Asia? Is it going to be in Europe?
Well, like somebody like Khabib, he's so sought after in that country. I'm sure they're going to waive something for him. Now, if it's somebody who's like higher up on the chain, that's like ranked 20th, I don't think they're going to let them leave.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think Khabib, they'll just kind of shuffle him. Like, go do what you have to do.
I don't know. It's weird. It's got to be weird for the fighters because they want to get paid, but then in the back of their head, they're probably like, should we be doing this? Like, it's nuts. It's such a weird time. But out of any sport, if there's one that's going to get back up before anyone else, I believe 100% it's the UFC.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have less obstacles to overcome in that sense, being a one-on-one sport. Of course, it's more physical than a lot of the other sports out there, but when you're talking about an NBA team, a baseball team, a basketball team, a hockey team,
Yeah, you need infrastructure.
That's a lot more people being around close to each other, having to practice together, play games together. Just the general environment seems a lot more hard or more difficult to really keep under wraps. So, yeah, for the UFC side of it, I imagine if they can find a way to either get mass scale testing or whatever the case may be to make this a safe environment, it being a one-on-one competition would seemingly have a step up on these other leagues and everything trying to do it. I mean, I guess WWE, obviously it's not, a true combat sport, but
how dare you? How dare you?
You tiptoed over that so well.
In a one-on-one setting.
You're lucky you're in Canada. I'm sure there's a lot of people that come over and kick your ass.
You tiptoed over that so well.
Whoa.
I was like, is he going to say it?
You said something like that before.
Like, is he going to say it?
And I'm not hating on WWE. I like professional wrestling as well.
I grew up on it.
You guys know what I'm saying.
No, absolutely. What are the restrictions on this now for reporting? Are you guys going to be allowed to go there?
I am not 100% sure what the deal will be with this May 9th card. I know if the April 18th event was going to happen, Dana White was going to allow a select number of media members. I don't know exactly what that was going to be. I wasn't going to be going regardless, even if the opportunity was open, just because being in Canada and the US, the whole deal with traveling, and I wasn't too keen on getting a plane right now, regardless of what was going on. So I imagine John Morgan would have done that one. Him being in Las Vegas, he could have just drove a couple hours over to the tribal land in California where they were hoping to host that event. I imagine if they were willing to allow a few media there before, that'll continue to be the case, especially if they're putting on fights in Las Vegas at the Apex. Of course, some really notable MMA journalists living in Las Vegas, I imagine they'll be able to figure something out. But in terms of like me and going to events in the future and all that kind of stuff, I'm really not sure how this is going to unfold. I've already kind of thought in the own back of my mind, I'm not really expecting to travel much more this year, because I don't really know like where these events are going to be. I don't think we're going to get back to events with fans in 2020. I think it'll probably be 2021. We'll just see how it goes in the future. But I've already prepared myself that I'm going to be watching the fights, assuming we get them back from television for the time being, which I'm not stressing about too much. It's not the end of the world.
No, and I saw you did like a live with Darren Till today, so you're still doing your interviews and whatnot from Skype or Zoom or whatnot. So, I mean, other than it's really cool that you can still report on it and still be a part of it, even though you're not there.
Yeah, for sure. And again, we're dealing with people who are in the exact same situation. Like all these fighters are just sitting at home anyways. So I think a lot of them really want to talk more so than even usual. They don't really have a ton going on. It's a mundane lifestyle for a lot of them right now. So I'm sure, getting interviews in that sense is a little easier. And even though the topics are generally very similar in a lot of ways, the coronavirus type stuff, when you want to fight again, when do you think UFC will be back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's still a lot of interesting people out there to talk to. But I imagine the fan base is growing somewhat tired of it and are ready to get back to actual fight talk sooner than later here, I think, as we probably all are.
The very good thing about this is the people that have had injuries like over and over again, now you have time to get to heal up. There should be no excuse that anybody's still out on injuries if this takes all this time. You know what I mean? All these guys that are always like, I have this bad injury that keeps coming back. Well, now you're going to have months to prepare and months to get heal and do your own training, so that everybody should be back full force when it does kick in.
It's also going to suck though, because it's so crazy how much this has affected the entire world, where like you want to think that there's somewhat normalcy and it's just kind of your little thing, but then the more you think about it, it's like none of these fighters can get paid now. So it's like they're just in the same boat as everyone else who's got a regular job and not making any money. It's pretty crazy how everything has stopped. And I was like asking my mom, like, you know, like what was it like growing up? And, you know, she's been through the Kennedy assassination and my dad's been in Vietnam, and both of them are like, this is the strangest thing we've ever lived through. It's bizarre.
That's wild. Yeah. I mean, it definitely unprecedented times for everyone. No one really knows how to tell anyone how to act in these times because no one's experienced it before. So we're all kind of going through this together for the first time.
Well, no, everybody tells everybody else how to act. That doesn't mean
well, I'm saying they don't know what they're talking about.
Yes. Well, there you go. Yeah. Oh, if you go on Facebook, everybody tells everybody how to act. But that's not what we're looking for.
No one's drawing on it from real experience.
No, not at all. No, not at all.
What's your daily schedule like when you get up now with taking travel out of it? Do you kind of have a list of people that you're sent that you have to contact, or you kind of got to create your own content for MMA Junkie?
Yeah, you're kind of, and that's one of the things that, you know, is good and bad, I guess, about this business and this job in particular. It's kind of sink or swim on your own. You're not really going to have people out there doing too much hand holding and things like that. So it's kind of on you to get out there and work the phones and keep an eye out for news. And it's not all about interviews too. If you have an interesting column you want to write or some sort of other idea, we have the resources and the time and stuff to do things like that. So it definitely makes the job a little more challenging. We're so event orientated that, because of course there's UFC on basically every single week. If there's not a UFC, there's a Bellator. If there's not a Bellator, there's a PFL or one championship or whatever the case may be. So many promotions and so many fights that it really doesn't give you a whole lot of time to sit and think about these big ideas and these big projects and all those different kind of things, just because it's moving at such a rapid pace. So you kind of have to just focus on different ways of delivering content to the people. And I think so far we've done a really good job over at Junkie at doing that. If you look at our staff, like go to the YouTube page, see the amount of fighters our staff as a whole have interviewed over these past couple of weeks. It's really impressive to me. So we just got to keep that up and try to keep delivering content to the people until we can actually get real live fights back instead of, you know, writing columns about events that happened 10 years ago.
Yeah, I noticed they've been doing like scrolling back and whatnot. What is remarkable though is you guys are still crushing out daily content.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be done. If we're not going to do it, who is? And like I said, we have a great team of really great reporters, and they have a lot of great contacts. So we've been able to get lots of stuff out there in this time. But I think, like I said, people are ready to get back to event coverage, but who knows how much longer it'll be of having to, you know, just spin the wheels in some ways, I guess.
Looking at that May 9th card, do you think that's the biggest card that they're going to ever put on with how stacked that is? Because, I mean, what they were going to put on for the Ferguson fight and what it is now is actually bigger than what it was going to be before, because they added, like, the Dominic Cruz was added in there, and they added a couple other fights in there that I saw. This card on the 9th actually seems bigger than what it would have been on the other card as well. Yeah,
the other, assuming we never weren't going to get Khabib and Tony regardless, we still had the Gaethje Ferguson fight at some point for the April 18th show. So yeah, it's not, of course it's a great card. You got 3 title fights on there potentially and a lot of other bangers. I think it's up there for sure. To me, when I was thinking like the best cards the UFC's ever put on, it strikes me as like UFC 205 and UFC 217. Of course, like UFC 100 was big.
Yeah.
This one seems really good as well. I just have such a difficult time getting any level of excited about it because, again, we don't know how many of these matchups can even come to fruition. Maybe things happen late notice, like look what happened with Rose Namajunas. Leading up to that last one, like just a couple 10 days or so before it was supposed to happen, she decided she's not prepared to fight because she has, a couple COVID-19 related family deaths. That could happen to anyone on this card, I guess, thinking of it in some matter. No one's really, Teflon to this. So I guess we'll see what happens. But if you're telling me right now, the card they put out is it top 3 events in UFC history for sure.
And definitely. I think it's just going to be weird. I mean, obviously they're talking about having Rogan there and having Rogan, do all the announcing and everything, but it's just going to be weird to not have the crowd cheering in the background. Like it adds an element to it. You know what I mean? Especially if you're watching it live, if you can't watch it live, if you have a really nice stereo system, like you can feel you know, the way everything changes. Now it's just going to be.
Are they still going to do buffer?
No, I'm saying now it's going to be almost like what I equate to like a high school wrestling tournament.
Well, it's
when
like
there's 80 million things going on and there's no one cheering.
The Contender Series or the show that they used to put on all the time.
Yeah, Dana White's Contender Series.
Yeah, like those the other one.
Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, the Ultimate Fighter, when they fought in there was always like that raw, like gym fight feel.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. It's
But then it's definitely weird because at that point you're dealing with people you barely know, all that kind of stuff, like lower level fighters, and it would definitely be a bit bizarre seeing like a big championship fight where the crowd's going wild typically and everything, and you have no audience. But honestly, did you guys watch the Brasilia card with the Kevin Lee and Charles Oliveira? To me, it didn't strike me as massively different, no crowd or anything.
I thought
especially when you're talking about one of the rowdiest areas too. And I think part of that, I guess, is to the UFC's benefit and to their detriment. Every UFC broadcast looks so similar. It could be in a 65,000 person stadium in Australia or a 5,000 person arena in Fresno, California or whatever. And the production is essentially the exact same. So I think, watching it on TV, it's not a massive difference. Whereas I think when some of these other sports coming back, it's going to be a lot more striking to see no audience and all that kind of stuff. But I think these fighters are able to deal with it more so than any, because it's all about shutting it out when you get in there, and so many of them talk about they don't even remember any of that till after the fact, et cetera. So I don't think it's going to impact the athletes as much or the broadcast as much as some of the other sports, honestly.
After a couple of minutes, it went away, and I was just used to it, and like you're just so focused on the actual fight, and like there is definitely like that crowd presence that I miss, but at the same time I was like, I don't give a shit, I just want fights.
Yeah, I know. I know you're willing to overlook it, but it's like it adds a separate element.
No, like I think,
you know what I mean, it's like watching baseball and the dude hits a home run and you just hear the people on the bench just clapping.
Yeah.
Like, oh wow.
Would I rather see Tony and Khabib? Like if Tony beats Gaethje, and then now this makes this fight even bigger. Because now it's like, what is it, the 6th time that they've tried to fight, and then he beat Gaethje, and say he beats him in a dominant fashion. Now, if those two fight again, I would rather see that with a crowd. That it would just be so much crazy energy for that fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll imagine when that does happen, if it does happen, we'll be in a better place by then. Khabib's not going to be ready to fight till probably September anyways. So I don't know where we're going to be by then, but who knows? It would definitely be a little bit of a disappointment if
circus tents, bro.
Circus tents.
We're gonna be in circus tents, bro. That's what it's gonna be. Circus tents on an island. That's what it's gonna
Fighter
be.
Island.
That's what it's gonna be.
Yeah, I'm excited to see if any of that goes. Any of that. We could start wrapping up. What's the craziest event that you've been to where you kind of like were taking it in and we're like, holy shit, man, like this is this close to the octagon. This, like, what felt like the biggest event that you've ever been at?
Man, that's a tough one. Mayweather McGregor, although it wasn't MMA, felt pretty damn big at the time. Just the energy in that building and everything, and just seeing how star-studded that whole week was. That definitely felt more so than like a fight. It felt like an event.
Yeah.
So when you said like, what does the biggest event feel like? I guess it was that one, just because boxing has so much pageantry to it and all these different things. But in terms of like being at a UFC event where it's just being like fully appreciating what you're watching and the actual fights were insane, I think it's got to be that UFC 217 card, which was their second event at Madison Square Garden in New York, which is the only fight card in UFC history where 3 title belts changed hands in one night.
Oh, that's right.
TJ Dillashaw beating Cody Garbrandt, and then
that was crazy,
knocking out Joanna and Jacek, and then the glorious return of my fellow Canadian George St. Pierre.
That's right.
Michael Bisping. So that to me strikes me as one of the greatest nights in MMA history, one of the greatest fight cards, and definitely when you ask me that question is what stands out as like the most memorable evening of just covering madness that happened in there.
That's awesome. Good for you to get to go do all that stuff. I always see you on there, and that's why I wanted to interview you. And when I started seeing you come on the scene and started following MMA Junkie more, I was like, man, he's got to be so lucky to interview that. And I wanted the story behind it and wanted to know how you got to where you're at. And I appreciate you so much for coming on. And when I reached out to you, like Instagram's crazy. Like you can just kind of talk to anybody, and then like sometimes people respond like you did, and then sometimes people don't. But when they do, I'm like, oh, this is nuts. And I'm like, hey, I got this show in a basement in my town. I'm like, would you want to come on? And not a lot of people turn it down. It seems like there's a lot of good people out there, and you're one of them, man. And I appreciate what you do with the MMA interviewing and all that. And it's just fun to follow you. And I want to give you a chance to plug MMA Junkie or how anyone else can follow you.
Awesome. Yeah. Most of the work goes on MMAjunkie.com. Pretty easy to just type in and find my personal stuff. It's all Mike Bohn MMA. That's Twitter, Instagram, MikeBohn MMA. And yeah, like you said, if there's anyone out there who wants to reach out or talk about anything, just hit me up. I have people all the time that hit me up about advice for MMA journalism and all that kind of stuff. So if you are someone out there that's aspiring to be in that industry, never feel hesitant to send me a message.
Awesome,
That's
man.
awesome.
Thank you so much. Do you have anything else, Jesse?
No.
All right.
Circus sense, bro.
Circus sense. Anybody who wants to find more on Never Again Radio, everything we do is on neveragainstudio.com, and you can get previous interviews and all of our content on there and apparel and whatnot, and that's neveragainstudio.com. And I just want to thank you again for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. Anytime you want to have me back, I'm here.
Awesome. Definitely, man. Thank you.